Time on here it said initialize and get ready, but I realized it had already started recording, so we'll wait and see. I think it lets me know, but all right. It sounds saying recording. So hi, Dr. Asia Lyons. I'm excited to have you here with us. This is our fourth now Meet the Mastermind Live as part of our Meet the Mastermind Live series with the Katalyst nonprofit consultant mastermind group. The idea came about a few months ago where I just wanted to pull the curtain back behind kind of all the great people really that are part of this community. And I'm just very grateful for all the conversations that we've been able to have together. Selfishly, it also gives me an opportunity to get to know you all because there are several of you that we have not connected with one-on-one. So this is our chance to kind of just say, hi, hey girl, hey, and see and get to know each other better, but also learn a bit more about you and your journey, hopefully to inspire any other women who are considering this transition for themselves, and also to get you in the face of people who need all of your brilliance and expertise. So that's the whole goal of this. And for any mastermind community member who wants to join me, I'm more than happy to use the space to do that. So welcome, Dr. Asia Lyons. I think you are one of our newer-ish members. So I don't know how you came about the work that we're doing and kind of what made you join. But I'd love to just kind of start by just getting to know you a little bit and learning a bit more about you. So share a little bit about your background and also your transition into consulting. I think so. Before we do that, one thing I'll say is we have all different kinds of women from all experiences and expertise levels and interest areas. We've had chief technology officers and USAID leaders. And you come from the education space. So there are a few of you all that worked either in higher ed, youth development and leadership, or early childhood education. So I think that's really cool. And I'd love to learn about what you were doing before and sort of what was the catalyst for your transition into consulting. So let's start there.
Okay. Hello, everyone out there. My name is Dr. Asia Lyons of Lyons Educational Consulting. So I am originally from Detroit. I'm in Denver now. I live in Denver and I've been out here since 2006, but I'm originally from Detroit and moved out to Denver to start teaching. So I got my bachelor's at the University of Michigan's Dearborn campus. And then my husband was boyfriend, now husband, decided I couldn't find work in Detroit because they were closing schools. So we came out to Denver with our U-Haul truck, our Geo Prism on the back, that Geo Prism with the window that you had to kind of clamp and then pull up. The struggle. But came out here in 2006 and taught in a school district here for 12 years. I have a K6 still certification. I think it expires in a couple years. Taught fourth grade, fifth grade, and sixth grade. And in the last 6 years of my career, I taught social justice classes and I taught math classes at a middle school in my area. And then in 2017-18 school year, I experienced a lot of racial battle fatigue within the school space, racism related stress, racial battle fatigue, and decided to leave teaching at the end of the 2017-18 school year. And so went from there to teaching or to working in a nonprofit here in the Aurora area, supporting families to understand the access gap that we have. For those who don't know what the access gap is, it's the gap in access for Black and Brown children to the best education that they could possibly get. So typically what happens, no matter what your income, there's they used to call it achievement gap, but achievement gap blames the student. Access gap. So schools are not creating access to close the space between the standard and what kids should know and what BIPOC kids actually do, or Black and Brown kids actually do get to learn. And so our job, my department and in that space was to go out and support families in understanding what the access gap was, and then to have them then push on schools to close that gap. I want to say I left there, also AKA fired from there, a year later. And they say they had a pivot and had to do some other things, but I say fired from there just really because I had some ideas and really was like, we have to work on this toxic work culture and these things. And they're like, we have an idea. We're gonna just let you go. So
that was their idea.
That was their idea. Me and
no more your
that
idea.
was it. They figured it out. So me and 6 other people got let go on the same day. And I was sitting at home, oddly enough, that day before I was fired, before I knew I was going to be fired. I was getting ready for work and I looked in the mirror and I was like, are you going to stay or are you going to go? Like, what you going to do? And so I was like, I'm going to go. And then I was fired. So to me, I was like, thanks, ancestors. Right. Because I got severance and I have a little unemployment. So while I was looking for work, I had a friend who said, hey, can you support the educators in my organization? Because what they needed was she would hire people who were passionate about youth and put them in classrooms to teach social justice classes, but they were not skilled educators. Mm-hmm. And so she asked me, could I go in and observe them, help them write curriculum, things like that. And I'm thinking, yeah, sure, until I get a job, right? Mm-hmm. And then I got to get back to work. And then a couple months in, she's like, you could do this full time. You could be a consultant. And I was like, it feels like lightning, right? I've only had that happen 2 times in my life. Once when someone said, you can be a teacher. And then this one, you can be a consultant. And so from October 2019 until still today, I've been working for myself in my consulting firm. So that's my story.
Oh my gosh, there's so much. Okay. I wish I had written some stuff down. So I want to talk about like the stuff internal to you in that moment where someone was like, you can be a consultant. So let's start there. So what happened in you in that moment where you were like, maybe I can, or, what was going on in your mind when you decided to actually say, okay, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to try this. I really want to know, like, because I think that's a common theme that a lot of us feel, and in particular, a lot of us who've actually made that leap. Like there's something inside that happens when either you have that realization and that light bulb moment yourself, or someone is encouraging you, which I think is also a really important and valuable piece to when you're surrounded by people who see your brilliance and your worth in ways that you don't even necessarily see it, the importance of surrounding yourself and having those people around you that you might not even realize are there or are seeing you in that way. So I think I probably said a bunch of stuff. My question is, so what in that moment for you were you experiencing or feeling when that person said that and you decided, all right, I'm gonna give this a shot?
Yeah, so it just felt like this is the thing. I'm just going to do it. It makes sense. I'd already had a taste of what it was to work for myself over the few months that I was working with her group, because at the time I was interviewing for jobs, right, and working in her space, and just kind of had already been thankfully, because of the nonprofit that I was let go from, have been in community a ton. So I went from being very siloed in a school district to 1 year of being constantly in community groups, constantly showing up at these different places. And so I was thinking like, okay, I think I could reach out to a few people and maybe they have some projects and this one's going really well and feels like it could last the school year, because mind you, it's October, right? So she's going to at least need me for the school year. I have a little bit of unemployment. The severance was only for 2 weeks. I don't want people thinking I was rolling in it, right? And so I decided, like, I'm just going to give it a try, right? And I did tell my husband. I ran downstairs and I told him, like, I'm not going to that interview, the next interview. I'm just going to become a consultant. I'm going to work for myself. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, I decided it's happening. And he's like, okay. And so, yeah, that was it. It was just kind of this is going to happen. And like I said, because I had been familiar with that lightning experience when I started teaching and how it had changed my life, I knew that this second experience was going to change my life. So there was no like questioning it. Like whatever's going to happen, it's going to happen.
I would say, honestly, that is a theme that so many of the women in the group that we get to work with and that I've worked with have. There's like a sense of, for some people, there's like the fear aspect of it being something completely new, which was my case as well. Like there was like a small aspect of it, right? There's also that feeling of like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to do this and this feels right. And I'm trusting myself. And I know myself well enough to know that, I'm going to give it my all. And like I say all the time, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't have to be forever. but at least you are kind of, you know, tuning into that feeling and that whatever that is inside of you that's saying, like, this is what you're supposed to be doing right now, and not overthinking it, you know? And so like my story was like, I remember a lot of racial junk at my organization too in 2020. And I was just like, I was on vacation with me and my 2 kids. And I texted my husband at the time and I was like, yeah, I need to leave. And he was like, okay, you know, we'll figure it out and we'll work it out. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, I need to leave right now. You know, it's like that moment that hits when you're just like, for me, I didn't really know necessarily what was next, but I just had that feeling like this ain't it. And I saw the impact that it was having on me and my health and the way I was like engaging with my kids. And I'm like, this, I can't keep living. I can't keep living like this. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I know this ain't it. Right. And I think that sounds like part of your experience. Like you woke up that morning being like, yeah, I'm out, you know, and then you got the notice that you were, you know, let go, whatever. But it's just so interesting the way that happens. And so let's talk about the theme of the racial trauma. We didn't prep to talk about this, but I know that's a really important element in a lot of the work that you're doing now as part of your consulting. And also, you know, we'll talk a little bit about the podcast that you have as well. But I know that's a theme. So just without sort of reopening sort of band-aids and wounds and all that kind of stuff, just talk about how that was an impetus for you to take matters into your own hands, I guess, if that's how we can start this conversation.
Sure. So, and well, the band-aid, you know, my wounds have been healed, so I'm totally okay, you know. But
how long did it take you, by the way? I mean, you said 2019.
Yeah, it took me about 2 years not to want to put the middle finger up when I passed the school every year. Right? It took a couple years. And that I can get into like the how and the why, but as far as like the racial piece, so when I was in my last year of teaching, I applied for doc school. And when I applied to be in a doctorate program here, I wanted to study youth participatory action research, which is the ways that youth can like find an issue to work on and make change, right? And the reason why I chose that is because during the year of from hell, I was put on leave because I was accused of having my students protest against the principal. Not true. Not true, but they did that. And so when I was on leave, I had the students did a silent protest and a walkout on my behalf, right? And so when I wrote my application for my doc school, that's what I wanted to talk about, the ways that youth kind of push forward and whatever, right? Do those pieces around policy change and different actions. And I think that year was the year of the protester, like Times Person of the Year was a protester. But I decided to, once I started the program, I was at the nonprofit at the time when I was approved to go and start the program. I decided to research the ways that racial battle fatigue from school spaces impact Black educators and our families. And I chose that because, just like you said, I was experiencing racism related stress in the workplace, which caused me to basically, my marriage was on threads. My child was very little. She doesn't remember much, but I just wasn't there. And so kind of fast forwarding and finishing up the program and in the program, thinking like, what do I want to do as far as my services that I provide? Not so much that I think about racial battle fatigue and presenting and talking about that in my work, my day-to-day services, but more so like in community and more so at conferences and things like that. So it doesn't necessarily always connect. Now it does. Like that's a service that I offer is like a 2.0 version of like, okay, now you understand racism, and anti-Blackness and things, but this is the next step. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that was the impetus, like having that experience, studying it in school, interviewing families and things like that, and then deciding to add that as a piece of what I do for my firm, but not the entire set of services.
Okay. Yeah, that does answer the question. And it brings up to me and again, like the women I get to meet with and talk with and learn from as part of this whole mastermind thing is like the pain sometimes becomes the power and the purpose. Like you said, it's not the whole part of what you do, but that experience is sort of integral how you help other people navigate these spaces, or help others understand the impact of existing kind of within these systems and environments and spaces. And I just think a lot of shit happens sometimes in life, and there are sometimes people who are able to take it and learn from it and grow from it and heal from it themselves, and then also to help other people's lives. And I think that's a mission and a testimony in and of itself. So I think there's just a lot of similarity with those of us who have transitioned out of that traditional working system, into something else. So it's a familiar story. It's sad that we have to go through it, but I think there is sort of a resurrection of sorts, and a redemption of sorts, and the ways that we're able to support other people. So you mentioned that it's part of the work that you do. So talk a bit more about the broader swath and scope of, is it Lyons Consulting? Is that
Lyons Educational Consulting.
Lyons Educational Consulting. So tell us a little bit about the breadth of your services, and then we'll talk a bit more about the podcast.
Sure. So we support youth serving organizations. So that's your after school programs, foundations, even higher education spaces, with programming support, curriculum development support, coaching, and onboarding systems creation. And as well as, like I said before, talking to employees about really the conversations about retention of Black and Brown employees when we talk about racial battle fatigue and its impact, right? So that's what we do. And I say we because there's me and multiple people on my team who are social workers, school counselors, teachers still in the classroom, former educators and librarians who help us to support folks. And people always ask, like, do you work with schools? And the answer is no, we don't. And the reason why is because a lot of times school districts have what we offer, right? They have curriculum developers. I mean, we could, but most of our work is with organizations that support youth outside of a school space.
So give me an example of what that would look like or who that would be.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. I'll pick a bunch of different places. So we're working with an organization, a university right now, and the university is writing a survey and did some interviews with preschool teachers to understand the working environment of the preschool programs in our city. And so they brought me on as a racial battle fatigue expert to have conversations or help the research team think about how race is impacting the ways that the preschool teachers are showing up. And so the reason why that aligns with us is because it supports preschoolers, right? So that's higher ed in an after school program. Same example I gave earlier. So we've had folks who will push into a school and hire folks, and then those people go into a classroom and teach social justice classes, and a school space. We come to the physical building and observe, support them, how to walk through parent-teacher conferences and things like that, because you don't necessarily know how to conduct a parent-teacher conference or family conference just because you love and have a passion for children, right? So we've done it as well. We've also supported organizations. I'll give you another example. At the foundation level, we supported a foundation when they built out a funding opportunity that school districts and counties and small organizations could apply for grant funding to build playscapes and playgrounds across the state. And so they asked us to come in and build a toolkit and to then be a technical assistant across the state to help folks bring community together to plan the playgrounds before they start building it. Because what happens is a lot of what we were finding was that folks had ideas of like how to build playscapes and tracks and walking areas for young people, but it was all organized by the older folks in community because they could meet at 12 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon. And so our work was to go in and say like, so where are your youth? Where are your queer folks? Where's your people experiencing disability? Like, where are these people? And let's walk you through how to make sure that everyone is seen and heard throughout the process, and not like a survey and then I hope you like it at the end, right? So yeah, we do all kinds of work in that way. And then again, like the classic, like supporting people who do after school programs, who just say like, hey, we have a Saturday program or a summer camp, and we really need our curriculum used to look like this, and over years it's revamped and to change, and we need to get back to like what our core beliefs are, but we don't have the capacity to build curriculum. So can you do that for us? So yeah, all kinds of things.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I think the point that I want to pull out from that is, and the reason I think I wanted to ask you the question about what it looks like, because sometimes you have an idea of what this kind of work looks like or who it can serve. But you've just given 3-4 different examples of like completely different entities that can be impacted by your expertise and your experience and the experience of your team, and also having, diversity of thought and experience, in the planning process, right? Mm-hmm. So that you can get to the outcomes that you need to get to be, kind of beneficial for broader audiences, right? And mm-hmm. So I think, again, in consulting, a lot of times we initially, and this might be even your story too, like initially when you started out, you might have thought it was going to look one way. And I think there's an important piece, like a personality piece that either has to be developed or you intrinsically have it, where you have to like pit the pivots and then be like, oh, I can apply what I do to this and to this, and and that's how you kind of grow in your practice as well. So it's not just you're pigeonholed, although some do kind of pigeonhole, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily. But for those of us who are consultants in a specialty area, in the sense of how that can be implemented and incorporated, there's just some sort of mindset shift that needs to happen, or at least kind of internal thing that needs to be lit inside of you to help you understand that it can look more than one thing, or it can look like more than one thing. Mm-hmm. So I think your experience, kind of gave a very clear example of that. And I hope, folks who are considering or who are consultants kind of are inspired by that, and sort of, maybe hopefully sit with it and think about how can, my expertise and services be utilized and be impactful in different kinds of spaces and with different types of audiences. So more power to you. I hope it continues to go, in that direction. That's really exciting. So let's talk about your podcast, because that's something else that if you started fairly recently, or has it been around for a while? I can't remember. I think I just started seeing more about it because now we're connected through this Katalyst space. But I know folks are interested in podcasting. So tell us a little bit about that, what inspired that, and how that's going for you.
Yeah, so my podcast is called, it's a me and Kevin Adams, my co-host. Our podcast is called The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. And you can hear it on Spotify, Apple Music, all that. And so it was inspired by me leaving teaching. So when I left teaching, I decided that I wanted the superintendent to give me an exit interview. So I emailed him and I said that I would like to have an exit interview to tell him about the experiences of myself as a Black educator and other Black educators I knew were leaving. And after several emails, he finally followed up. And then I told him all the things, right? I had it written down, like my principal's racist. This was happening. This is happening. The silence of employee, all the things, right? And not for this, like, he's going to know and then change his ways, because, like, let's be real. You don't become a superintendent of a school district by speaking up for Black employees. That's just not how it works. And so when I left that, I was walking out of the interview and I was thinking, there are so many Black teachers who leave the field of teaching and never share their story, right? And so it's left up to whoever's left to say, like, oh, they couldn't cut it, or blah, 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 blah. And we never really say, like, no, this is what it is. Mm. And so I decided, I had been on a podcast with Kevin and his co-host for a different podcast just recently before that. And I was thinking, like, I should pitch to them the idea of the exit interview. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. And so for a while, I was on their podcast for a good number of years as like a special every month, where Kevin and I would interview Black educators across the country, former educators across the country, to say, like, what was your story of how you got into education? What was that last straw or straws? What do they believe that unions and school districts can do to keep Black educators? What are they doing now that they've left? And like, what's bringing them joy these days? And so we started off with them and then kind of broke off so that we could have people could find us more readily, versus saying, like, go to theirs and then scroll back 5, right?
Right.
And so we've just been doing it ever since. just showing up, interviewing folks. We just interviewed someone yesterday, Mia Street. Shout out to Mia out in Texas, shared her story. And we're just going to keep showing up and sharing people's stories, former Black teachers, because that's important. We want to have a conversation about recruitment, but not retention, right? Here in Colorado, they'll fly out to HBCUs and spend all this money for HR to be in hotels and do all the thing, but then affinity group spaces have Qdoba catering every single time, or they don't want to put more money into retention conversation. So we'll just keep sharing that story and keep showing up for those Black educators who've left the field. So yeah.
I feel like that needs to be an NPR, like just or some like larger syndicated type of thing. Like honestly, like like
we're trying.
I live in Florida where they're trying to dismantle all kinds of stories of people that they don't want to hear, right? And just the power of being able to have a platform and create a space to just affirm people's stories and be like, you're not making this up, and give them an opportunity as part of their healing journey, right? That's really incredible. That's really incredible, and I think an incredibly valuable resource and opportunity for people's voices and stories to be told and heard, and not pushed under the rug, or not like you said, like people make assumptions about what's going on, right? So you can hear straight from that person's mouth and make your opinions accordingly. So cheers to taking the reins of healing and growth and evolution and empowerment, right? Like it's empowering. You're empowering people to be able to use their voices to heal and also to help others. And also hopefully to get people to wake up, right? And recognize that like these are real stories that are out here that kind of need to be heard and told, and it's impacting people's lives, and which trickles down to their families, and it's all connected. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for being part of this community. So I think I'll end it on like I'm a big fan of like gratitude and forcing time and space to sort of sit and reflect. And I know we didn't talk, and it just came to me. So sorry if I didn't prep you and it's like throwing you off. But like, what's something about kind of this experience that you've had either in consulting, in entrepreneurship, in building communities of your own, that you would say that you're grateful for in this moment?
There's so many things.
It's a big question.
It is. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be nosy. Right? To be curious, to be here one day helping this organization there. We just got our first international client from Tanzania, which is I guess pronounced Tanzania, right? Yes. So so to be able to like find out what's happening there, to just ask questions and show up and just do that all the time. And I'm so grateful that organizations have let me into their space, that they've allowed like vulnerability. It's been so great. And I'm also grateful for people like Stacey Brandon, who's been on my podcast, who's a good friend of mine since my days teaching, who was like, it's time to go. Right? He was like, you can't keep staying here. You got to get up out of here, right? And who really encouraged me, and just see her also leave teaching and go off and start her own thing. So like all this, and being in a community of Black women, and to choose all my things, but being in a community of Black women and people that I want to be around, and say like, you give me the heebie-jeebies. I'm not going to work with you, right? Yeah. And choose that, and to say like, I want to spend more time with you, or I want to help you in this way, or let's connect in this way, and have the freedom to do so without someone like constantly steering my time and taking my brilliance. So that's what I'm grateful for, like all of those things.
Yes, good. Oh my God, I love that. Liberation is a big theme of everything that we do, and it's not just a singular definition of that, and it looks different for every single person. But I think all of those things that you mentioned just hit home that it's really ultimately liberation and choice and self-actualization and freedom. And yeah, those are definitely things to be grateful for. And that I think, keeping that in mind is just going to keep you, it's going to be your North Star to kind of continue to keep you and all of us, when we're able to identify those things, in the direction we need to be going, and recognizing that you don't have to be about somebody else's game if it's not serving you, if it's not fitting you, and if it doesn't feel good. And like you said, if it gives you the heebie-jeebies. So congratulations to you on making that leap, on figuring it out every day. I don't even like to say being successful, because what does that really mean anyway? But just, day by day, figuring it out and being curious. I think that's so important. And I think so many of us have that, and it's just squashed, right?
Yes, yes, it is.
Like for those of us who really have that innate sense of like curiosity and questioning and pushing and, what, but why, and can it be better, and tell me more, like all of that, it doesn't get to be explored in certain environments and settings. So if you're able to kind of cut free from that, it's pretty, I don't know, it's pretty amazing. So thank you for having this conversation with me. We are like over our time. This is the longest one we've had so far. So this is a great.
I love talking.
Yeah, this is a good discussion. I appreciate it. And I'll see you next month.
Oh, thank God.
To be in person in Costa Rica. So I'm really excited about that. And it's just a beautiful space, a community of women. Talk about like people that you want to be around. Like this is gonna be that. So anyway, good to see you. Thanks for the conversation. So where can people find you if they want to learn more, work with you, pay you to pick your brain, all that kind of stuff? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can email me. Folks can email me at Asia@Lyons, Lyons, LyonsEducationalConsulting.com. I live on LinkedIn, so I post there often. So you can also message me on LinkedIn. I do have a website, LyonsEducationalConsulting.com.
All right, let's keep elevating Miss Dr. Asia Lyons. Thank you very much, and thank you for just bringing your energy and your expertise to my life and our space. And we'll see you next month.
Yeah, see you. Bye.
Bye.